Incredible Hulk #1, single highest graded copy in existence. There is one 9.4 unrestored, has never sold. There is one 9.6 restored. It is this one. The thing with this book, it's extensive B5. That means a lot of work was done. If it were to sell, the unrestored 9.4 would easily get $2 million. There is no 9.6. An unrestored 9.6, if it were to exist, probably way north of $2 million. This is going for $15,505. Less than 1%. You'd think it would go for a few $100,000. It's equivalent of buying a 3.5 or 4.0 copy of the book. People will pay more for a 4.0 blue label than a 9.6 purple label. And it sold. Let's see if it moved. 15,505 is the high bid. Hi, and welcome to Grails to Astonish. Here is the second half of the second night of the ComicLink Fall Featured Auction. These closings take 4 hours. I get a ton of footage. I cut it down, but even cut down, it is still too big to put into one video. I could do it, but who would watch it? I split these in half, and this is the second half of the second night of the auction. Enjoy. First, Neil Adams, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Green Lantern 76. I do know that this is a Bronze Age key. For some people, it marks the beginning of the Bronze Age, the transition from silver to bronze, or a few issues before or after this when Speedy had a drug problem. That was sort of the beginning of the shift from Silver Age to Bronze Age sensibilities, a little more real world seeped into comics in the 1970s. So this is Green Lantern 76 in 9.4. This seems like a particularly high grade. What are the populations like for this book? 3,000 copies, 2 in 9.8, 29 in 9.6, 50 in 9.4. Pretty abundant in high grade. $4,200 fair market, white pages, and we're already almost exactly, the next bid will put us over fair market, and we got 2 minutes to go. So pretty good chance that this will beat fair market, actually. And that gives me an opportunity to eat some tempura orange chicken. All right, 10 seconds left to go. This Green Lantern 76 has not moved. 41.19, and it closes 4,750, bit of a jump there. That closed about 10% above book. Good for you, Green Lantern. House of Secrets 92, PGX 9.6. This is one of the big dramas of this auction because this book was in the summer featured auction a few months ago. And it sold for, I think, $12,500, give or take.
They bid it to $12,650.
The fair market value on a CGC 9.6 House of Secrets 92 at the time was $34,000. But because it's in PGX and not CGC, it went for a lot less. I don't believe this is restored, it's signature, but collectors don't trust PGX to detect restoration. And there's lots of good reason to be suspicious about why the owner of this copy submitted it to PGX rather than CGC. It's possible that they knew there was restoration done, didn't want to get the purple label, went with PGX. And there's no way, once it's in the case, of inspecting it to be sure. So I think that's the reason buyers are cautious and why it sold for so far below fair market in the last auction. The buyer flipped it. They didn't claim it from ComicLink, so ComicLink has now put it in the next auction. I don't know if the buyer paid for it and is now selling it again, but I suspect they just never handed over the money and ComicLink is stuck with it and they're trying to unload it. At the end of the day, it is a House of Secrets 92. Whether it's restored or not, I mean, that's a big question, especially for a Bronze Age book. There's some tolerance for restoration in the Golden Age, less in the Silver Age, and I would say virtually none in the Bronze Age. I don't know that I've ever seen a Bronze Age restored book. It just didn't happen. It gets even more complicated because there's a signature from Len Wein on the cover. So if you crack it, get it graded by CGC, are you going to lose that signature authentication? You don't want a blue label CGC book with the Len Wein signature on it that doesn't have the authentication. That's also going to make other buyers who might buy it from you suspicious. So there's just a lot of taint on this book. It's going at $10,250. That's good news for whoever bought it and flipped it. They're only about $2,000 below what they paid. So they're on the hook for the difference, presumably, plus 10%. And it may go higher. There's still 38 seconds left. So anybody who was watching that last auction probably isn't going to want to go higher than that on this auction. It was always likely that it would go for less. And then to make matters worse for the person who is flipping it, there's a 9.0 right below it selling 45 seconds later, and it's Blue Label, off-white to white pages. And if you go back and forth between the two, there's a whole lot of tanning on this 9.6 that is not apparent on the 9.0. So for about 15 different reasons, I would rather have this Blue Label 9.0. It closed, let's see if it moved in the last few seconds, 11,813. All right, I feel good about that price for every reason. The fair market has moved up in the last 3 months. It's now at 40,000 for this book, so that's good news for the flipper. And they got a decent price, 11,813. Hopefully the buyer at this price actually claims it and we don't see it again in the next auction. Now this 9.0, whew, even though it is a Bronze Age book, it's not very high population as Bronze Age goes. 3936. It's higher than most Silver Age keys, but lower than most Bronze Age keys. So you don't see a lot of copies of this at super high grade. You got 135 9.0s, only 3 9.8s. It's more like a Silver Age book in terms of its population. 5,250 is the fair market value at 9.0 CGC. This was just below it at 48.29 and it closed for 52.87. So pretty much exactly, almost precisely fair market. I mean, Swamp Thing is not much of a presence in pop culture right now. There was a TV series that I think was short-lived, some movies in the 80s, but its reputation lives on. There was the great Alan Moore run in the 80s. Bernie Wrightson gets a lot of love and appreciation from collectors. I would love to get my hands on a copy of this book in mid-grade. I don't particularly need a high-grade one. Then we got a bunch of Human Torches that I'm going to skip in anticipation of the Incredible Hulk drama that's coming. Incredible Hulk #1, single highest graded copy in existence. There is one 9.4 unrestored, has never sold. There is one 9.6 restored. It is this one. I don't believe there's any sale on record for this book, and it was just graded last year. The thing with this book, all this restoration was done. It's extensive B5. That means a lot of work was done. If it's level 5 restoration, that means it was probably in tatters before it was restored. Maybe a 0.5, to be honest. I don't know how much can be done. And they gave it a B. You got A, which is professional restoration, C, which is amateur restoration, B, which you almost never see. I interpret it as an insult to a professional restorer. A means it's professional restoration. B means a professional restorer screwed up. If there's a different way of looking at it, semi-pro, what is a semi-pro restorer? You either do this for money or you don't. If you do it for money, you're a professional restorer. If you got a B, you're bad at it. Is there any other way of looking at it? And I kind of agree. I hope the person who did the restoration work isn't watching. If they are, what I would say to them is, why did you regloss it? You regloss a book because it's lost its shine. Over time, these books fade and they get sort of a matte look to them instead of the glossy look that they had on the newsstands. That's what time does. Reglossing gives it that shine, makes it look like it was on the newsstand, but who are you really kidding here? If it just did that and made it look like it was on the newsstand, that would be okay. But it doesn't just do that, because you can look at this and you can see something's wrong here. It's shiny in a way that it shouldn't be. Here is the reglossed, restored 9.6. Here's unrestored. Reglossed, not reglossed. It's subtle, but it's there. I see it most on the word fantasy, with Fantasy As You Like It. And you can see that it's just kind of blurry. That really bugs me. So the fair market had 9.6 unrestored, if it even existed. I would say the 9.4, if it were to sell, the unrestored 9.4 would easily get $2 million. There are 8 9.2s. It's priced at $800,000 from a sale. Just in June, there was a $780,000 sale. Last year at Heritage, there was an $825,000 sale. So that 9.4, if it ever found its way to market, would get well over $1 million, probably 2. There is no 9.6. An unrestored 9.6, if it were to exist, probably way north of $2 million. This is going for $15,505. Less than 1% of what the theoretical unrestored value would be. Regardless of what criticisms I have of this book for it being restored, it's still a 9.6. It's still a beautiful copy. You'd think someone out there would want to pay 10% of the $3 million theoretical value. You'd think it would go for a few $100,000 because of what it is. The aversion to restored books is so powerful that no one is willing to bid more than $15,500, which puts it, if it were unrestored, that puts it at around 3.5, 4.0. It's equivalent of buying a 3.5 or 4.0 copy of the book. People will pay more for a 4.0 blue label than a 9.6 purple label. That's where it's at. I think that is harsh. But as I say that, I wouldn't really want this book. I would rather have a 3.5 blue label than this book. That's just me. And it sold. Let's see if it moved. 15,505 is the high bid. 26,501. That's a big jump. It's not $300,000. And I know commenters are going to call me crazy for putting it $300,000, but hopefully I walked you through the logic of how I got to that number. Both of these books, the 7.0 and the 6.0 blue label, are about to go for much higher than that. The 7.0 has sold. Fair market is $52,000. Ain't nothing wrong with this. 7.0 off-white pages, $52,000 fair market. It's at $40,000. Sells for $48,000. A little under 10% below fair market. That seems right. And then this 6.0, not as much of a fan of this one because it's got the Stan Lee signature. And not only that, it's still in a blue label, which means it wasn't authenticated. Honestly, I don't care about a blue or a yellow label. I don't care if that's authenticated or not. I know Stan Lee signed that because Stan Lee signatures have never been hard to get. There's no one's going to fake a Stan Lee. You might fake a Jack Kirby signature. You might fake an Alan Moore signature. Nobody's going to fake a Stan Lee signature. I'm sure Stan Lee signed this book, but when CGC graded it, couldn't verify that it was him, so they put it in a blue label. We'll ignore the signature and just look at it as a blue label 6.0. Fair market on that is $36,000. Bidding was at $30,000 and it stayed at $30,000. So that's almost 20% below fair market, and the 7.0 went for almost 10% below fair market. And this one went for 90% below the theoretical fair market that I came up with. So almost the same amount of money changes hands. Which one would you want? Would you want the purple label 9.6 or the blue label 6.0? They went for within a few $1,000s of the same price. Yesterday we had the Amazing Fantasy 15, 9.6 purple label. But I thought the restoration on that Amazing Fantasy 15 was much better than the restoration on this Hulk. The other big drama that I talked about in the previews is you had a Hulk 181 9.8 off-white pages, almost perfect copy, and a 181 9.8 white pages green label. The green label, when it comes to Hulk 181, is the result of the Marvel value stamp being missing. In the 1970s, Marvel put out a Marvel value stamp book, and if you bought issues of their comics, there would be stamps inside the book, which you could cut out with a pair of scissors and glue into your Marvel value stamp book. 10% of the population of Hulk 181 has that stamp missing. What you don't often see is an otherwise perfect copy. And I was thinking about this morning. It's understandable why there's one and only one 9.8 copy with a Marvel value stamp removed, because somebody opened this book up and cut it with a pair of scissors, cut that little rectangle out of page 10. It would be fairly difficult to do that while maintaining the absolutely perfect, pristine condition of the book. You have to open it up. You have to, crease the spine a little bit. You got to get in there with a pair of scissors. And if you do that, you're probably not wearing latex gloves and in a, hazmat suit when you do it. Something's going to happen to the book when you get in there with the pages like that. Most 9.8s, they're 9.8 because the buyer bought them, put them away as soon as they bought them, never read them, never opened them up. That's pretty much what it takes to have a 9.8 comic from 1975. It hasn't been opened. It hasn't been read. This one's definitely been opened and read and handled severely. It was, but it still stayed at 9.8. So there's one and only one 9.8 green label. And it's getting such a harsh ding for that, because a 9.8 of Hulk 181 is, as I've said many times, the most wildly overpriced book in the whole comic book hobby. $70,000 is what this book goes for. And I've seen it sell many times for that price. I saw it sell on Heritage 2 weeks ago for $72,000. There are 164 copies of this book. You pay $70,000 for something that there is 1, 2, maybe 3 copies of. You don't pay $70,000 for anything that there are 164 of in this world. That's just, what is there in any hobby that is that abundant in that high a condition and goes for that much money? It's an anomaly. I've called this out before. I think it's price fixing. I think it's market manipulation. So it makes sense, given my theory about the market manipulation, investment funds coming in and buying up all the 9.8 copies. They're not going to touch this 9.8 green label because it's not perfect. They're only going to buy up the 9.8 white page, blue label copies of this book. They're going to make multiple accounts and bid it up so that it always sells for $60,000, $70,000. That's what I think is likely to happen because they own these funds, whoever's buying these books, they own most of these 164 copies. This is my big comic conspiracy theory. I think it is artificially inflated at $70,000, and I think the forces that are artificially inflating the price on this book are not touching this. And so we get a more realistic assessment of what this book would actually go for if there weren't these outside forces bidding it up. This 9.8 off-white pages was bidding at $52,000 and sold for $55,555. The 9.8 white pages, green label, bidding at $7,000. And I looked it up. There is a sale of this book from 2 years ago on Heritage. It did sell for $9,600. This is the exact same copy. So the seller presumably paid $9,600 for it on Heritage unless it changed hands offline in between those 2 years. I doubt it. And they are at the moment going to get $6,300 for it because ComicLink takes their 10%. And it sold for $96.51. It sold for $51 more than it sold for on Heritage 2 years ago. I'm guessing the buyer just now knew exactly how much was paid for it and wasn't going to go any higher. They put their high bid in, matching the Heritage price or over it slightly. The book changes hands. The seller loses $960. ComicLink makes $960. And there we go. Then we got the 9.2 copy, CVA label, white pages. These high prices are really only at 9.8. Usually you'll see the 9.8s going for 2 or 3 times the 9.6s. In the case of this book, Hulk 181, it's 4.5 times the 9.6 value. Sharp, sharp drop off down to 9.6, and then we're down to 9.2, 72.50, and it closes for 76.51. Okay, so the 9.8 green label did sell for more than the 9.2 blue label. Moving on, Hulk King Size Special number 1, which I got right here in 9.6. It's auctioning right now at 9.8 off white to white pages. I called out that this is a Steranko cover. It, to my eye, looks immediately like Steranko. You know Steranko's style, but I was surprised to learn the other day this is not entirely a Steranko cover. Mary Severin had a hand in this. I believe she redrew the face. So it's not just a Steranko cover, it is Steranko and Severin. The issue itself is not worth reading. It's an Inhuman story. Hulk ends up in, what is it, Azatlan? What is the name of the Inhuman city? I can't remember. Atalan. Atilan? Hulk ends up in Atalan with the Inhumans. The art in the interior story looks nothing like the cover. It's not very good. It's not well drawn. It's not a good story. It's just a great cover. But as I've said many times, the cover's really all that matters. We're not reading these books. We're putting them on the wall. They're in hard shell cases. If you want to read it, you can read it. You got the app. So 9.8 off white to white pages, copy, $10,500 is the fair market value. Going for $9,100, sells for $9,100. That makes sense. Iron Man 55, First Thanos, signed by Stan Lee. Where is the Stan Lee signature? Do you see the Stan Lee signature on here? I don't see it. Is it on the inside? Did Stan Lee sign the inside of a book? 9.6 white pages, $3,700 fair market in blue label. Signature is almost exactly the same, a couple $100 more. I imagine these are mostly Starlin signatures. And here's one Stan Lee signature. Ooh, is this the same copy? 03510, 03510. Here it is. We've got the copy that just sold of Iron Man 55, 9.6 white pages, sold for $4,080 5 years ago on Heritage. And here it is, selling at $31.99, and it closes at $4,050. $30 less than it sold for 5 years ago, the exact same copy, minus your 10%. So the buyer lost a little bit of money flipping it after 5 years. Oh, I missed the Journey in a Mystery. You know, I kind of had it in my head that I might think about bidding on this because I've got Journey in a Mystery 83, first appearance of Thor at 3.5, and I had the thought that it would be kind of cool to upgrade to a UK variant 7.0 white pages. It goes for a lot less because it was not sold for 12 cents. It was sold for 9 pence. You can see there in the upper left corner, this is the UK variant. But as I learned recently, these UK variants in the early 60s were printed with the US copies and shipped off to England where they were sold with a slightly different cover page. The collector's market today dings UK variants almost as badly as restored. They'll go for 60% roughly, very roughly, of the US version's price, as is the case probably with this one. And we have in this auction a rare opportunity to see an apples to apples comparison like we saw with the Giant Size X-Men 1 in CGC and CBCS at exactly the same grade. Here we have two 7.0s, both white pages, exactly the same grade and page quality. Key issue, the only difference is one is 12 cents and one is 9 pence. This is a UK variant versus a US version. The US version's fair market value is $22,000. It was bidding at $20,000 and it closed for $20,500. The UK variant was bidding at $7,300. Let's do a quick comparison. I like that we can do this quickly on ComicLink. Here's the US, here's the UK. Here's the US, here's the UK. I can see a slight increase in the amount of tanning on the UK variant, but so subtle. This is a very nice looking copy for a third of the price. I would definitely take this. I was thinking I would perhaps bid on this, see if I could get a good price for it, and then unload my copy, which is a 3.5. I wouldn't mind upgrading to a UK variant 7.0, which a 3.5, it still went for quite a bit more than a 3.5 is going for right now. So I would have to spend some money to trade up for it. And it sold, whoa, whoa. I didn't expect that. It just sold for $14,572. It was at $7,300 before I clicked. So there was a last few second bidding war. And it ended up going for, what did I say, 60%? It ended up going for 70%. Not 70% of the fair market. Fair market's $22,000, but apples to apples comparison right here, $20,500 for a US version, $14,572 for a UK variant. And let's pull up the old calculator. Math. 71%. If you got an eye toward picking up some key books, particularly Marvel Silver Age keys, which have these UK variants, and you don't mind seeing pence instead of cents on the cover, which I certainly don't, you can get them all at a discount. Not as steep of a discount as it was looking like it was going to go for. It was looking like it was going to go for 65% off, but it ended up going for 30% off. Marvel Mystery Comics, Alex Schomburg cover. So we got Toro splayed out and bolted to some sort of mechanical thing as these little green-headed alien guys run their drilling machine on tank treads into Toro's stomach. Got another Schomburg cover here. Submerged Nazi Fortress number 3. This is number 3. I'm now very curious about what Nazi Submerging Fortress 1 and 2 look like. It is very well armed and technically not entirely submerged. This is the thing with Schomburg covers. He did covers like no one else did covers because his covers are whole entire stories. There's so much action happening, your eye scans over it and you put the pieces together. Kirby would kind of focus you in on one thing. He'd have one thing bursting out of the page. It didn't take long for your brain to process what you were looking at. But Schomburg, it just kind of washes over you. It's like a 30-second process absorbing everything going on in a Schomburg cover. I'm not saying that Schomburgs are better than Kirby's. From a sales perspective, you kind of want to do what Kirby's doing. You want to leap off the newsstand. From a general aesthetic perspective, simple is good. There's nothing simple about Schomburg covers. They'll often mark, bondage cover. The CGC likes to put in their notes when there's bondage happening in the cover. It's always either the sidekicks or the love interest. So I'm just going to call it a night. On night 2 of the ComicLink Fall Featured Auction, we still got one more to go. Now I get to finish my dinner and lie down. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.